Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Houselights, the podcast that tried to review a movie about a book about flowers, and somewhere along the way, things got weird. There were dreams, sex, swamps, screenwriting gurus, and one very sweaty Nick Cage. I'm Tristan Riddell, your host, currently caught in an endless loop of rewriting this intro while spiraling into self-loathing, sugar binges, and the haunting echo of Bob McKee yelling, "God help you if you use voiceover." And next, in our neurotic writer's room, who's smart, sincere, and possibly on the verge of falling for an orchid poacher, John Mills. And completing our trio is someone who recently confessed he might leave everything behind to chase orchids in the Florida swamp, Darren Moser. Today, we're unraveling Adaptation, the 2002 film where Nick Cage plays twin screenwriters, Meryl Streep gets high and maybe falls in love with a toothless orchid thief, and the movie you thought you were watching takes a hard left into drugs, murder, and an alligator. This podcast is dedicated to my twin brother, Hank Riddell. Rest in peace, brother. Rest in peace. All right, so I have seen this movie many times. I did not see this in theaters. I was too young at the time, I think. And but I did buy it, buy one, get one free at Blockbuster previously viewed movies. And so I've had this on DVD for a very long time. When was the first time you guys saw this?
I don't think I saw this in theaters. I know I saw it on home video, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time I saw it. I haven't watched it in a very long time since, but it's definitely a movie where even if you've only seen it once and it's on home video, somebody says Adaptation, you're like, oh yeah, I know that one. Like this movie sticks with you regardless of whether you loved it or hated it. Like it definitely carves out a little segment in your brain where you're like, oh yeah, the Nicolas Cage plays his own twin sort of thing.
Darren, how about you?
Today, this was my first time watching it. The cover of the potted plant that's cracked makes a lot more sense now because I remember looking at it, on a Blockbuster shelf and being like, Adaptation, what? Okay, it's his head. That doesn't make any sense. And then I kind of never thought about it again. We probably were supposed to watch this in review for one of my film classes in college. It feels like the kind of movie that was on a list and I somehow dodged it. Not in a negative way, but just never came across it. So it was fun watching this after John Malkovich, same writer. There's shots of John Malkovich being made in this. It's very meta, but not meta. It's something, that's for sure.
That's a way to put it.
How did you feel about the being John Malkovich stuff? Like, did you think it was fun? Did you think it was cheap? Like, what did you, like when you first responded to it, what was that response?
Well, honestly, usually I never try to look at a Wikipedia article if I have not seen the movie at all, because it's very quickly will give away spoilers and things. But when I saw that, I did have to pause and looked up the writer's Wikipedia page, and it was like, did he write John Malkovich? Yes. Okay. Confirmed. Does he have a twin? No. Okay. And because I think rightfully so, the movie was throwing what is reality at me right off the bat, and I was already treading water, which I think is great. Like how a movie giving that visceral reaction. So yeah, because it's like hiding the lies in truth. Was he the writer of John Malkovich? Yes. And then you start to believe like, well, does that mean that that's how he acted on set? Well, I don't know now because I know part of what you told me is true. So is the rest true? And that's kind of the whole movie.
It is. I think one of the challenging things for this movie is I think it is actually, and this is going to sound insane the way I say it, I think that this is less accessible to non-film fans than Malkovich. Malkovich is one where it's like if you sit down with somebody and they're not like a diehard film fan, you can be like, listen, this is just weird. Just go with it. And they'll go with it. And then you sit down with them to watch this this is going to be one where you're going to lose half of the audience by the closing credits, because they're going to be like, what the hell is even happening right now? And I think that if anything, there is because Darren, you said this when we were talking about John Malkovich, where it was not, you said Hollywood loves a movie that's about movies. And I would say
the movie
that
process.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say that this movie feels like it's made for those people who felt that being John Malkovich wasn't enough that, like they were like, you know what, we could take it up to 11. Let's go ahead and amp this one up. So I think that's the biggest challenge with this movie, is it really climbs into itself after a certain point. And you're either going to choose to go with it, or you're just going to say, okay, whatever, and disconnect. Like I could very easily see sitting down with my wife, and about 30 minutes in, she'd be like, "What? Why am I even watching this?"
Just walks out.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say on a positive note, I think it's trying to work at two levels, where it's telling us a story as an audience, but obviously it is also having a conversation looking off to the left at writers that are going to react in a very different way of, oh my gosh, I've been in my head saying I'm stupid when I'm trying to write page 5 of the draft. Oh, I saw, like, there's a relatability in that, because he's getting so meta on his own writing of his own piece. And then he's also talking to himself as his brother. Like I think there's kind of two movies going on. Both are a bit wacky, but I have to give it that.
Let's talk about the dual protagonists. Well, I mean, I guess they're not really both the protagonists, but let's talk about the dual performance of Cage. What did you think? Like, John, what did you think about his performance as both brothers, and what did you think about the effectiveness of having that within the movie?
I think it's very effective, specifically because I think Nicolas Cage is one of a handful of actors that can pull this off without me calling bull S at the very beginning. Like, he has that energy. Like, I'm not saying anything anybody else wouldn't say. I'm not like terribly insightful here, but like, Nicolas Cage comes on and you see this sort of premise start playing out. And you're like, yeah, okay, this is a Nicolas Cage movie. Sure. That makes sense. And I think it's because Nicolas Cage is arguably the most fearless actor that we have in the modern day. And I would struggle to think of this movie working with anybody but him. I don't think it does. And I think that the premise is highbrow enough that if you don't cast the right actor in this role, you're all is lost. So kudos to them for getting Nick Cage to play these roles, because I don't think it works without him. I mean, are there other actors where it could have happened? Yes, but I would have to sit here and spend the entire hour with you guys being like, well, who else could pull this off? But
that's the beauty of it, though, is that he's not the first person to come to mind, and you probably would take a very long time to think of Nick Cage when you're developing this movie. But then after you mention it, or even after you see it, you're like, who else could?
Right.
Who else but Cage? And that's a really interesting and very narrow niche. Darren, what did you think about? I want to ask you specifically about the screenwriting process that they both went through. Obviously, they're two sides of the spectrum where they're showing extremes. Where they have Charlie, who is he sees himself as an artist, and he wants to do something unique and different and inaccessible. And then you have Donald, who's just like, I want car chases, I want cops and guns and horses and everything like that. Darren, what did you think about the screenwriting aspect between the two of them?
Yeah, first off, like, you very quickly buy this as two people. Like, there's no suspension right away. You're like, okay, they're different enough. You don't feel like, oh, he just pitched his voice down a little and now he's Donald. It's like, no, this feels like a different person. And yeah, it takes because that's the arc we go through, is with Charlie. Like, when he's spouting off some of his ideals, I'm like, dude, like, good luck. And then he kind of gets it shoved in his face with the lecture. And it's like, yeah, what are you like? I want to write a movie with no conflict. Like, it makes me think back of Gene Roddenberry laying down we have to have these characters, but they can't actually have interpersonal conflicts. And it's like, welcome to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and we're going to show you how we can do that. But no, I think the highest compliment could be, by the end, I cared about both characters. I saw them as people. I cared about what happened to them. I mean, it was in the fourth act because, this it takes some turns at the end. But no, I think as writers, it did straddle that line of a movie about writers that's also being written. Like, it's very meta, but it doesn't come across as like he never broke the fourth wall. He's never looking at me, the audience. And I think that would have broken it, but it straddled that line, but it didn't go over.
I like that. That's interesting. I never really thought of it that way before, but that would have been a very easy thing to do. I particularly like it when the fourth wall is broken, but you're right. This wouldn't have worked. Like this would have been off-putting.
It's already deep enough where he's talking about the movie that he's like, he catches up to the self moment in his writing. It's like we put in the VHS tape for Spaceballs, and we're at now.
The first thing that I thought of. That is absolutely. I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
But it works because it's just that moment. And I guess I will say he does kind of break the fourth wall right at that moment where he says, "Oh, I shouldn't use voiceover. What the heck? I'm going to use it anyway." Like, because he's caught up to now. You feel the wall break a tiny bit, but he's not talking to us. But he is, because it's now. But it works. I will say it does work.
I got to interject really quick though, because we're talking about breaking the fourth wall, Nicolas Cage's performance, what the movie's about, and everything like that. What does Susan Orlean, who wrote The Orchid Thief, feel about this movie? Like that's what I can't.
That's a good question.
Figure out.
I looked it up. Because I knew this question was coming. Because my first instinct was, oh man, I bet she thought this was awesome. Like seeing herself, like running around in the swamp with a gun, trying to kill a guy.
First
but then I sobered up, and then I was just like, wait, like this is somebody who's in the public eye, who understands that audiences sometimes aren't very smart and thinks movies are real. And that was her first instinct, was people are going to think that I'm like this. People are going to think that third act actually happened. And so she initially said no when they pitched it to her. She's like, no, you can't portray me this way. But then basically everybody else around her said yes. And then she started realizing like the craziness of the script and how over the top it was and how Nick Cage was going to play Charlie Kaufman. And she's like, okay. And now she actually does love the movie. Like once it got made, she actually does love it. But there are morons out there who believe that Kaufman has a brother and that he died tragically because the movie was dedicated
and Rose
to him.
Are on the Titanic. I saw it.
Yeah. No, but that's the thing though, that this movie was dedicated to his brother. And it was co-written by his brother. He's the only fictional character in history to win an Oscar, or at least be nominated for one. And I remember like when this was going out, like I was listening to the radio and I heard a movie critic talking about Charlie Kaufman's brother like he was a real person, and that it was tragic how he passed, and like how it was cool that the movie was dedicated to him. And I was like, oh my God, people are actually believing this.
Yeah, but at the same time, like we've touched on this with Stone covering The Doors or JFK or Spike Lee talking about Malcolm X and stuff like that. It's like people go in, and I think people, we all know very well. It's very easy to condemn, but people go in with a very trusting nature. Like it doesn't matter how many disclaimers you put on there saying, the events in this picture are fictional. Everybody you see is fictional. This is all a work of drama. Everybody's going to sit there and say, oh, well, this must be true. But I would flip that around and I would say that at a base level, it's sort of a tribute to Nick Cage, because to Darren's point, you're invested enough in both of these characters by the end that it's the ultimate emotional trick. It's like a magic trick where you believe that the girl got sawn in half or something like that. you know it's not true, but there's a part of your brain that's like, well, that's what I saw. That's what's true. So I'll give people a little bit of a break on that.
If I had saw that he had a brother, I would not have been surprised. Like it was that. It makes you question. It makes you, and I did not know that both Charlie and Donald were, because already one of them is a real person, but that is, that blows me away that both names were on the nomination list and one is not even a real person.
I mean, which you would think that the Academy would have some sort of rule where they would say, no, guys, you can't do, or WGA would be like, no, you can't put a fake name on a script.
The rule is put into effect. Only real people may be nominated for Academy Awards.
Right. I mean, it feels like the ultimate thumb in the eye to the Writers Guild and the Academy to be like, oh, look, your rules, I found the loophole, right? You allow Alan Smithy and other things like that. I'm just going to make up a name, and this person doesn't even exist. Like it almost feels like a prank that the South Park writers would make,
So, all right, there's a lot of great people in this movie. There's a lot of great performances, and since we were talking about awards, Chris Coooper won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his performance. Darren, do you think that was deserved?
Absolutely. I mean, you say there are a lot of people in this movie, but there's really three. Like, it is such a small micro cast of, and again, obviously they interact with, Tilda Swinton and many other characters, but yeah, he transformed in this movie. Although I do want to ask you guys, with LaRoche, I feel like it's a little different watching Adaptation in a post Tiger King world, because that's what I immediately thought of that kind of like off the wall. Like it felt like that's the person, but obviously that didn't exist back in 2002. So did either of you on this rewatch, did it even cross your mind until I just said it?
I didn't think of Tiger King,
No.
but now that you say it, it's almost like Tristan's thing where it's like, well, once you say Nicolas Cage, you're like, of course, this is the only guy. I think that's really insightful. That's, I can get that sort of vibe where it's like a guy who's invested so much of his identity in this to hide from some pain. If anything, it allows you, I think what's beautiful about the way the character is written and the way that Coooper performs it is that there is, I think it allows you a specific channel of empathy for somebody who you might look at as a dismissible person if you were to meet them, where you can go, you know what, maybe this person is so committed to this bit because they're so hurt that it's their shell, it's their protection. And like, I think that's in a large way a beautiful thing. I like what you said here because it really is helping me look at this character in that sense of, and it is there in the text of the film. This is a guy who has built this whole self as a way to protect himself from being hurt again. But then at the end of the movie, that's what winds up hurting him. And so there's this beautiful cyclical sort of idea about it. And so you feel sympathy, even though he's doing illegal things, exploiting a loophole and doing terrible stuff, you still feel sorry for him at the end. You feel a sadness for him instead of an anger. I think Tiger King's a great way to draw that out. Yeah.
I always love Chris Coooper in a movie. I think he's one of those actors that it's easy to say, like, oh, Chris Cooper's in this, it's probably going to be good. Or at least his performance is going to be good. And that's how I felt about Jim Beaver too, even though he's only in one scene. Like when as the ranger, he pulls up and you see Jim Beaver's face, you're just like, it's Jim Beaver. Okay, all right, cool. Solid performance coming. And apparently Stephen Tobolowsky was also a ranger, and he got completely cut from the movie.
That's a damn shame.
I know, right?
I love Tobolowsky. He's so great.
And also, I mean, like we even we haven't even got to Meryl Streep yet, who's obviously is a highlight, but like you have Cara Seymour in this, who I can't help but think of American Psycho, when she pops up, and we have Gregory Eitzen, who we basically see like the side of his head, and he's the prosecutor, and we also have Peter Jason as defense attorney. Like they get almost no lines at all, But yeah,
They're
these are really good actors all throughout. And so Meryl Streep's performance, like John, I know that you have a mural of Meryl Streep on your wall.
I do.
And she's one of your favorite actresses of all time.
I have a Meryl Streep tattoo on my back, in fact.
Yeah, and
it's just a full back tattoo.
Are feeling like she hasn't gotten enough nominations.
I honestly no, she hasn't gotten enough recognition through time. I mean, talk about an overlooked actress who hasn't gotten the claim that's well due her.
She'll have her breakthrough. I was hoping it was this, but
at some point, she will stop being the Susan Lucci of big budget films, and she will, in fact, get recognized.
For all of you who don't know, we're being extremely tongue in cheek.
Yes.
John, that's why I'm asking you this question. As someone who is not an automatic Streep fan, what did you think about her performance in this movie? Was it just Meryl Streep being Meryl Streep, or did you actually connect with this character?
I did not connect with the character until the ending, but I credit a lot of that with how the ending is put together editorially. I have nothing against Ms. Streep. I don't. I have nothing against her as a person. I get why everybody loves her as an actress, but I can't see characters beyond her. And if I have to jump on this grenade and be like, it's a John problem, okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's a John problem. That's fine. But during the first 3/4 of the movie, I'm just like, look, there's Meryl Streep doing a thing. But then at the end, like the very end, I think that there is the way that it's put together, I'm able to forget that it's Streep. And so I will actually, I guess it's kind of backhanded compliment where it's like, they help me get past my Meryl Streep issues in the ending.
That's not an unfair thing to say, because I mean she's surrounded by Nick Cage doing two performances that are very anti-Nick Cage, and Chris Coooper, who you've never he completely, like, the closest that you could see Chris Coooper doing this is way back with Great Expectations, and even then it's completely different. And so she's surrounded by people who are doing something radically different, and she's in her niche. Like, this is a very Meryl Streep performance in a very Meryl Streep movie. That's her. So I completely understand where you're coming from, John. But the thing is that I think what I really liked of her performance is the subtlety of her face acting, like her facial expression.
That's fair.
I thought was superb in this. I think, like, when she was listening to LaRoche in the van, and when she was kind of hiding in the bathroom from her friends, and then at the very end when she decides that they need to kill Kaufman, just like that, everybody's taking a beat and letting Orlean have her moment, and like seeing that journey that she takes in her mind. I think that was the standout performance for not standout performance. Like, that was the standout aspect of her performance for me, was just like the subtlety of her facial acting. But it's easy to get overlooked with Coooper and Cage right next to you.
Yeah, I'm in the same. I'm very similar to John, where like Chris Coooper and Nick Cage vanished into the roles very, very, very quickly, but Meryl Streep, and I'm not a Meryl Streep fan, but she's a great actress. Like, I recognize her, but I'm not putting her on a pedestal, But I'm looking now with LaRoche. It looks like they were very close to doing John Turturro, which that would have been. I could see him doing it. Nothing against Chris Coooper, but one of the other supporting cast names you hadn't gotten around to yet, Tristan, was Brian Cox, who just nailed. That now, I cannot watch Brian Cox, unfortunately, in anything and not think of X2. Like, is.
Well, this was Brian Cox playing Brian Cox, basically.
Yeah.
This is
because Robert McKee is a real person too. Like, there's so much blurring in this movie.
It's unfair to the X2. Like, yes, he's great in X2, but come on, man, you're killing me here. At least go with him playing Hannibal Lecter in Manhunter or something. Come on, man.
John, you mentioned South Park earlier. Do you remember that bit where they said, like, Steven Spielberg's coming down, known for such movies as as a 1941.
1942.
Like
1941.
and always.
And always, oh, jeez.
Yes. Yeah.
That's Darren saying Brian Cox from X2.
Sorry,
I love that guy.
It's ingrained in my brain. I think he did an amazing job in that. Not
He
saying
did.
It's
I don't see. That's the funniest thing is I don't discount that. Right? Like Tristan, you're mentioning.
Patrick Stewart is never greater than when he was Charles Xavier in his wheelchair.
No, but like you put Brian Cox in a movie, and I'm like on board.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll watch it just to see whatever scenes he's in because he is that good. Like he's my Meryl Streep. Where you put Brian Cox in a movie, and I'm like, that guy.
Can't say that when Meryl's in the movie. It doesn't translate.
I can't. But like Brian Cox, I think he's so fun. Like,
well, that scene when he's on stage,
yes,
yeah.
Like that scene when he's on stage is genuinely like probably one of the biggest takeaways from the movie for me. Like when I think about Adaptation, I think about Brian Cox screaming at him, saying, why would I want to go see your movie? Why would I want to give you 2 hours of my life if you think nothing happens in the world? And I think it's such a great microcosm of, I think, an issue that a lot of people have and a lot of writers have it too, where you're constantly told, well, write what you know. Okay, fine. But I feel like there's a lot of issues that people have where because it didn't happen to them, they think it doesn't happen. So because Kaufman has had an uneventful life, he thinks that that's what life is. It's uneventful. And so he projects that onto other people. But, McKee's character and the real McKee, says like, it gave all these examples about like every day a human being decides to destroy another one, chooses a woman over his brother, and everything like that. Just like, all these very none of these examples that he gave were outrageous, and it just lands. And I absolutely love Cage's performance. And he goes, "Okay, thanks." And he sits back down.
It's this might be an outsized comparison, but do you think that Brian Cox? It's not a 1-to-1, not by any stretch, but I feel like we're in a post-Magnolia world where Brian Cox sees this as his sort of Tom Cruise onstage self-help guru moment, where he comes in and he knows his entire, and what I mean by that is he knows in this scene his entire job is to punch the audience in the mouth, to just unsettle us to the point where we're like, what is even happening right now? Like, do you think that's an apt comparison? Do you think that that's a good way to look at it?
Yeah, I can see that. I was gonna say I hadn't watched the trailer for this movie, but it's one of those movies where if they had just shown a large chunk of the Brian Cox scene and maybe a little bit of dialogue from Nick Cage, and that's the entire trailer, I think I would have been hooked. Like, movies very rarely do that, where they show you Tenet, a few others have done that, where they've given you a large chunk of the movie or of a scene, and they leave you hanging wanting more. And I think the Brian Cox scene could have delivered that.
Yeah. I don't recall the trailer, but I agree with you. If I had seen the Brian Cox scene, even in 2002, I probably would have made a real effort to see this in the movie theater. I think it also probably would have helped audiences. Again, I don't know if the trailer was that.
I doubt, but I'm just guessing.
That would have helped audiences understand what they were getting into for the movie, and probably would have drawn more people into it, because I think that this movie is, again, getting back to like sort of what we've been talking about since the beginning, is like there's a barrier here. And I think if you were to lead with the Brian Cox thing, that would at least inform the audience or the potential audience of what they can expect this movie to be about. Because that's what a trailer is supposed to tell you, is like, what is this movie about? What am I expected to understand or glean from the characters going through this movie? And that really is a thing where, for all of the other stuff, Cox is the right actor, because I think he's just one of the best actors that I've ever seen on screen. But that scene distills the entire why of the movie, because it's all about, how do I tell a story? How do I convey an idea? how do I, make it interesting for somebody? And I think it's so fascinating because the movie is on a certain level. We just did all of the Scream movies and it's so meta, but in such a different way from the Scream movies. From, like it's meta, but not in that wink and a smile sort of way, in that very deep sort of way that you expect when somebody says that something is meta.
John,
I think that's
what
that's
is this movie about?
I think this movie is honestly about the difficulty of trying to relate, because you have Orlean trying to relate to the orchid thief. You have the orchid thief trying to relate to the world. You have the writer trying to relate to himself and trying to relate to everybody around him in terms of how do I communicate things. So I guess probably if I were to say one word, I would say this movie is about communication. How do I communicate? But basically that scene where they're both sitting in the swamp, something I do not recommend in the Florida Everglades, just going to put that out there, where, Charlie and Donald are talking to each other and they're sitting there talking, and it's about, they suddenly realize that their whole problem has been trying to communicate, trying to understand each other. And I mean, that's what I think the movie is about.
Well, and in that scene, they finally break down their assumptions of each other. I mean, and I think it's very subtle, but when they're talking about like the past as brothers do, like that feels like a brother conversation where it's like, oh, you were rejected by this girl and I thought you didn't, they were laughing at you and you didn't know. And then he's like, you choose what you do with your love. And that's it. No one can change that. I
love that line.
Oh, it's great.
Where he said like, that was her problem, not mine.
I think that conversation is one of the best conversations ever committed to film. And I think that whole thing is absolutely gorgeous. Like it's, if you walk away with nothing else from this film, like I would show just that scene to like a teenager to be like, look, it's the ultimate, it's going to be okay scene. Like you have to make a decision not to let the world tell you how to feel about things. You will decide how you feel about things. I think that scene is so gorgeous. Thank you for calling it out, Darren, because that's exactly right.
Darren, what did you think about the third act? And what did you think about the scene? Here's I'm going to give you a John question here. All right,
so it's going to be 2 minutes long, and Tristan's going to say, "What are you even asking me?" So so the audience understands.
Yeah. So we have the scene in the hotel room with the two brothers, and Charlie is obviously anxious and he's frustrated, and he's also jealous that Donald has written a screenplay. People like it. Catherine Keener is at his house. He's supposed to be the artist. He's supposed to be the genius writer. And his brother, who he sees is now a Hollywood hack, is getting success. And so he says, how would you end it? What would you do? From that moment on, we get a completely different movie. We get Donald's movie.
It's almost like they hand off the protagonistness and it shifts between the two.
Even though it focuses on Charlie still, you're getting a shift in perspective on how the story is told. So what did you think about that? What does the third act work for you? Because, Brian Cox himself said, you may have issues, but nail the third act and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Did they nail the third act in your eyes, or was it weird? Was it too different from the previous two?
No, I think they did. I mean, I almost call it the fourth act. It's so late in the game that it feels that removed, but no, it does. It's so amazing how it lands because, like you just said, they telegraphed it with Brian Cox saying, you nail the third act, like, again, semi-meta, because we still need to nail the third act, and the third act feels very different. I will say that the protagonistness shifts, because if you think about it, Donald starts driving the story. His decisions of where they go, who they're spying on, like, I will fully say that it shifts between the two characters. But yeah, I mean, it caught me off guard as well because, to be honest, like getting up to there, I'm still kind of grasping and I'm trying to get a bead on this movie, and it's kind of slogging along, and then it's like a click, and you're like, oh, I'm now invested, but I needed all those other acts to get there. You couldn't have dropped me in right here. I would have had no idea who any of these characters are. But I have to admit, it got me there. It got me where I'm now caring about the characters. I'm caring what happens to them. You're throwing crazy stuff at them. Man, cars, you never know what cars are going to do in this movie. But yeah, I will say it very much succeeds in the third act. And like they telegraph, you kind of then don't scrutinize the other two acts as hard, because at the end of the day, they did their job. Were they amazing? Was I fully invested by the first 5 minutes? No, not even close, but it got me there.
John, Lance Accord photographed this movie, and he's the one who did Being John Malkovich as well. I have a 2-part question for you. Did you feel like this was the same cinematographer, that he was doing the same thing? Do you feel like this was an evolution of a photographer, of a cinematographer? And how do you feel he filmed the twin scenes? Did that land for you?
I am going to answer in reverse order. The twin scenes, I think, were absolutely nailed. I have a deep and abiding hatred of split screen. Like all the way up to and including Star Trek VI, where like the split screen doesn't line up as well as it should, and I have an unreasoning hatred of it as a tactic, because I think that rarely does it work well, and I think it's always better in concept than execution. Whereas in this case, I think that the split screen works freaking perfectly. I will sing its praises to my dying day, because I think that it does everything exactly right, including balancing the exact right amount of 1 shot and 2 shot, so that I accept that they're in the same space, but I don't rely on it, and I don't have it long enough to stare at it and say, I can see where the line is. Sort of like, just to throw it under the bus, another Star Trek movie, the overuse of diopter in Star Trek the Motion Picture, which fills me with rage every time I watch it. Anyway, so I love the split screen use. I think that Lance Accord deserves a lot of praise. I think that additionally, Nicolas Cage deserves a lot of praise, because I feel that both of those performances inhabit the scene that it's in. And like, there's a logical part of my brain that understands that they are not actually there at the same time, but I feel like they are there at the same time. And so that is to heap all of the praise on that. Do I think this looks like the same person that shot Being John Malkovich? I think I wouldn't necessarily call it an evolution. That feels like a weird word to use. I'm not throwing that at you as like an insult sort of thing. But I think that this is an adaptation, see what I did, of the shooting style of Malkovich, where I think that I look at this and visually I can see a stamp where it's very similar. I can tell it's the same people put this movie together. But while I wouldn't necessarily say it's an evolution, it reads as the same people put it together, but understood the sensibilities they needed for this story. They adapted for the type of story they were going to tell. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I'm saying.
Darren, going completely opposite direction, different direction. Did you recognize Doug Jones in this movie?
I did not. I just saw him in the credit list, and I'm trying to place him.
John, do you know where he is in the movie?
No, I don't.
I mean, he's so freakishly tall. I'm trying to think when he would have been.
He was the orchid thief who was dying of dysentery.
Oh, in the past.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
that makes sense. Okay, that makes total sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, like Nicolas Cage casting, it makes perfect sense once you say it. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Right? Isn't that crazy? Darren, I hate to give you this question, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
We're talking about Spike Jonze?
We're talking about, we haven't talked about Spike Jonze yet. We're going to end with him.
Okay.
But Carter Burwell did the score for this, as he did for Being John Malkovich. Was this a memorable score to you? Was it just a score? How did you feel?
I feel it was a good score, but I mean, I feel like this is my broken record of I'm a theme guy. Like if you give me a theme for a character or a person or a place or whatever, I'm going to remember it. And this wasn't a theme type score, which isn't bad. I don't think it should have been a theme type score. I don't think that necessarily would have worked. So memorable, I couldn't hum you a single bar, but did it ever distract me or take me out of it or, jar me? No. And I think in that regard, it did what a score should do and underscore the performances, because the performances were what I was paying attention to.
What's really weird, and this is weird for me to even think this, because I'm very much a fan of directors. Obviously, we all are, because this is a director-focused podcast. But when I think adaptation, I don't think Spike Jonze. I don't think, wow, that was a really well-directed movie. Even though he's the one who put all the pieces together. He's the one who got the performances out of these great actors. He's the one who, worked with the editor to put it together, who worked with the cinematographer to get the shots. It's one of those things where there's like almost so much going on and so many good things that you forget that somebody was at the helm. Am I alone in thinking that? Or how do you feel about that?
Would you say this feels like a Charlie Kaufman movie?
I think that's the thing, is that they did such a good job at making this all about the writing process that you forget that this is a movie that was directed by someone and shot by someone and edited by someone.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Darren. I completely agree. I lose Jonze in this. And it is because of all those other aspects that you're talking about, specifically the writing. I think of this as a Charlie Kaufman movie. Is that a tribute to Jonze, that he brought the writer's intent so perfectly to screen that I lose him, that it's an unintended side effect? That I think of Being John Malkovich, and then I think of Adaptation, and then I think of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, just so you guys know. I adore that movie on a level that I cannot even comprehend.
I didn't know that.
Oh my God. I can't, like, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I think, is one of the few perfect films ever made in the history of humanity. Although, I mean, in the history of film, because, humanity has been around a little bit longer than film, arguably.
Just a smidge.
Depends on your philosophy. Who knows? But I think that, I think it's an unintended consequence of this film that Spike Jonze has lost. I think that I know that he's the reason it comes together the way that it does, but I think that it is, you know what? I'll go back to making my Baz Luhrmann reference. Moulin Rouge comes together and everybody forgets that Baz Luhrmann was the reason that it did.
That's what I was thinking too. And also, like, with Being John Malkovich being nominated for Best Picture, but he wasn't nominated for Best Director. It's like, how do you think this movie got together?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was a ghost in the chair.
No, I really jive with that, John, because I don't think any of us mean it in a negative way. It's
not at all.
Like, I think you look at, I think if I wasn't doing this as a podcast, I'd just watch Adaptation. I would look up the director, and once I see that he and Charlie collaborated on their previous movie, it all would click, and I'd be like, "Oh, that makes total sense." Like, they worked together, they made John Malkovich, and then they have that trust and that rapport. And yeah, this movie is 110% writer focused, but it only happens because they already have that. If they'd had been like, Charlie's like, "Hey, I need a director. Anyone want to come direct this?" Not going to work. It had to be that pairing and that trust. But yeah, he does kind of fade into the production background, as it were. But that, in a way, only allows the writing level to, I mean, you think of other movies like The Artist, or again, we've said there's a cacophony of movies that are about the movie making process, and this one is one of the top as far as writing. Like, it has to be on that list, on that short list.
John, do you think this movie is rewatchable? And if so, why?
I think it is rewatchable if it works for you. And this is one of those movies where if somebody were to come to me and say, I hated Adaptation, I would look at them and I would say, I understand and respect why you said that. Being John Malkovich, I might defend even a little bit and say, no. You got to give it another shake. This one, if somebody comes to me and says that, I'm simply going to say, I understand you. I get it. This is very much a movie that is rewatchable if and only if you enjoy it. Which I mean is true of any movie. So
I get what you mean. If it clicks with you,
yeah, and you're going to know if it's rewatchable within the first 30 minutes of the film. If you don't go along with it by that point, just leave. You're done. It's okay. We can all leave as friends. There's no hard feelings.
Darren, I have a question for you, and it's my last question because I'm hosting today. And I make you go first every single time. I need to hear your final thoughts on the film, and how many script revisions are you giving it out of 5?
There's so many script revisions. This movie. I mean, like they telegraphed it nailed it in the third act. I didn't think it was going to get there. Like I was along for the ride, but I was like, what is this about? Like, my goodness, some of the moments with Nick Cage and Charlie, like my skin is crawling. I'm like, he's so socially awkward and in his head and self-deprecating where I'm just like, ugh, like, I don't know if I can take a whole movie of this guy. But again, I've said it before, you're making me care about the character and you express which character I should care about. Like this movie does a lot of things right in that regard. Whether or not it's your favorite or not, that doesn't matter in this case. It, pulls the story together, has a wicked fourth act. I will say it's a fourth act no matter what, because it is so late in the game. But, and it makes you doubt in a way what is real, what is biography, what is, because there's a lot of, I mean, like I feel like I'm repeating what I've said before, but when you hide the little lies within the truth, which this movie does, of real people, real stories, real books, real writers, it starts to bleed or blur the line between. So I'm going to give it a 4. This movie, I will say I kind of disagree with John as far as I think if you're hooked in the first 10 minutes, if it's rewatchable, where I say it really comes down to the ending. Like if you can make it through you might get turned off in the first 10 minutes, but I think you have to give this movie a whole watch through shake because it is such a ending movie. I can't think of another example of an ending movie, but we all know they exist. I'm going to give it a 4. Will I rewatch it? Probably not, just because it my favorite source material. Will I watch it with a film friend who is interested in something like that or hasn't seen it and I get to introduce it to him? Absolutely. I would rewatch it in those circumstances, but not as a casual viewing. So 4 rewrites. I'm almost done with the script, guys. Just give me 3 more weeks.
John, how many Nick Cage masturbation scenes out of 5 are you giving this movie?
What? Why? Why are you going to do that to me?
I saved that one for you. I had that idea before we even started podcasting.
And I feel like it was very much tailored, and I hate you for it, but I will say that, okay, Darren, forgive me.
No, I've gone already.
Disagreeing.
Why are we going back to me?
He's going to have to tell you why you're wrong before he can give his rating. I could feel it.
Oh, no.
I could feel it.
Oh, no. No. It's not about wrong. It's about the fact that any movie where you're going to say, oh, no, you just have to go to the end. It's a very tough sell, man. It's a very tough sell. I will say that
That's like when you watch a TV, like you recommend a TV show, like once you get past the first 3 seasons, that's when it really
I feel like
starts
that's
to
me
land.
and Andor.
when
I'm like, hey guys, give Andor a shake, but you gotta basically
Andor
watch
season
the whole thing. Yeah, I know.
Andor season 2, just skip the first 6 episodes.
No,
and
but
it's the
don't,
best
you can't
season you've
skip-
ever seen.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
You're not
All right.
wrong, but you're also wrong.
I'm absolutely right, and you know it. Anyway, I give this a 4 as well. It is a 3-star movie because at some point it climbs up its own Malkovich hole and stays there. But the performances are so damn good. And then that ending does just pay off so much. Like it is, Darren's right in this sense. If you sit there and you just stick with it, you get to the end and you're like, wow, this is meta on every level I ever wanted. And the performances are great. 4-star movie. So that's where I end. 4 stars.
Just take the audio where he said I was right and then just dump the rest.
Hopefully I was sloppy enough in my speech that you cannot isolate it.
For me, I give it a 4 as well. So this is 4 across the board. I think this is a really good movie. I often forget how good this movie is, even though I've seen it many times. But every single time I watch it, I'm reminded of how much fun it is and how interesting it is. But at the same time, it's not perfect. I think for the reasons that both of you guys have said, like the first 2 acts aren't perfect. Like there's a lot of things that I'm just like, I could skip that scene, or like I could move past this, or like that's too awkward. I know you're supposed to be awkward, but it's too awkward. Things of that nature. But there's so much going right for it. And even though I think that Being John Malkovich is a better movie than Adaptation, and even though I gave Being John Malkovich a 4, I'm still giving it a 4 because this is solid craftsmanship across the board. So, Darren, what are we doing next week?
Well, we're heading into our next chapter in the House of Spike Jonze with 2009's Where the Wild Things Are, based on the beloved classic, here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.